And welcome. Raise your inner game today. I'm David Levin. This is our Friday episode, so we're talking about the inner game of life. Tuesdays are for the mental game of sports and competition. Fridays are for the rest of our lives. First, real quick, I just want to say it's good to be back. It's been surprisingly hard to get back into the groove of doing the pod. There's a lot to it that I kind of forgot about. But now that I am, I really do enjoy thinking about things during the week that I want to talk about with you. We'll see how long that good feeling lasts, but pretty happy to be in the groove right now. So that's nice. All right, so how is your inner game this week? I hope you are enjoying the weather. It's beautiful here again this week. I guess I heard about some major flooding in Florida. Probably not enjoying that too much, to say the least. I hope you have some fun things planned for the summer. Hope you're not too stressed out. I know I talk about this a lot, but you can really feel the growing pressure. Maybe it's because I follow the news so closely. Actually, that's almost certainly why I feel that way. Probably be a lot better for my blood pressure and anxiety if I didn't, but I don't feel like I can right now. There's just too much going on politically here and all around the world to disconnect. Now, that might just not be clear thinking on my part. Does it really help to pay so much attention? Would I be more effective and feel better if I step back a bit? I probably would. Not sure I can, but I'll keep thinking about it. The better choice for me is probably to stay plugged in, but also do more to counter it. Have a better morning routine, especially do more sitting. Anyway, I'll keep thinking about it. I hope you'll also put some thought into the inner weight you're carrying and just make sure it's a good balance of what you feel you need to do for the cause, to feel like you're helping out, doing your part, but also to take care of yourself so you can still be the person you want to be. That's really the key always, right? All right, lots to talk about today. Some news from Apple I'm actually excited about. Really interesting news from the Supreme Court this week. Good news that's maybe not quite as good as it sounds. Of course, more things to talk about on the election watch beat, as it were. A great perspective on finding purpose in our lives. We'll talk about pickleball and being active in general, and a couple of TV recommendations. All right, we'll start with ups and downs. Okay, so what things are lifting me up this week, making me feel happier and lighter versus what things are pulling me down, making life harder? In the ups column for me this week, one was just this morning, and you wouldn't think this was going to be an up, but it really was. It was a tech support call with Apple. Our Apple TV seems like it might have died, which is a bummer. It turns out it was 7 years old, which I was really surprised to realize. It didn't seem like it had been that long at all. I tried everything I could think of to get it working. And of course, it was in the middle of the kids trying to watch something last night, so there was some frustration involved and all that. These are first world problems, yes, but still. So anyway, this morning I gave Apple a call, and the guy I talked to was just so good and clear and helpful. I got someone on the phone right away. There was no waiting. He just instantly got right to the problem in exactly the way you'd hope. He was pleasant. He had answers for every kind of question I had, even for, where in our area could I go to get it looked at? I mean, it was just so perfect. It actually made me happy. And this has always been my experience with Apple support. I've been with them forever, decades, really. And it's always been the same. If you have a question, you pick up the phone, you get exactly the help you need. It's crazy how good they are. And this is in contrast to the nightmare we've had this couple of weeks, trying to switch our cell phone service from Verizon to AT&T. I can't even go into all the details because it takes so long and bring up all that stress again. But I had a call just a couple nights ago. First, I waited almost an hour just to get someone on the phone. Then I was on the phone with them, no joke, 2 full hours, just trying to get our phones activated. It should not be that hard. And even with all that, our son's phone was basically bricked for 72 hours. No cell service, no data, 2-3 days. It was from a mistake they made, and there was nothing they could do about it. Just an absolute nightmare every step of the way, and 180 degrees different from my experience with Apple. I will tell you what, I know Apple's stuff is more expensive, but I also assume this level of support expertise is expensive. I'm happy to pay more to have that available. And that's just one benefit of being in the Apple universe to me. Anyway, not meant to be a commercial for Apple, but man, oh man, what a difference to get genuinely good tech support. You know, there is no hell like computer hell. At least that's always been my take. Nothing makes me crazier, almost nothing, than tech problems. It is a real life benefit to have access to quality support like that. Just a theory here, but if everyone was as good as Apple at tech support, I think we would have a lot less division and anxiety and acrimony in our society. Kidding, of course, but not completely. Being stressed out makes us crazy, right? Less crazy is good for everybody. So anyway, that was a long, positive rant. Thank you, Apple tech support. My goodness. My second up, I've talked about this before. We had a big family dinner this past week. I think there were 11 of us here, us and the cousins, as we call them. It's our other family here in town. And there's just something about it that makes me happy right there in the moment. It's just such a lovely thing. The energy, the playfulness, it's great. And the good feelings last for a while too, at least a day afterwards. Still thinking back and just brings a smile to my face. It's a beautiful thing. Gives me an excellent lift. For my downs this week, for sure, the AT&T mess. That was actually very intense. That pushed me right up to the edge on that call I mentioned. In a way that doesn't happen very often. Even though it would be another big hassle and probably waste some money, I am seriously considering going back to Verizon after all. I'll maybe wait a month or so and then just go back because, I don't know, it was just so negative. So there's a saying I heard somewhere, I don't remember where I heard it. It had to do, the original context was working with clients, new customers. The saying is, starts bad, ends bad. If things just don't feel good in the beginning, if the communication is bad, if there's tension or struggle or complication, you should take that as a sign and just pull the plug in the beginning. It's not going to go well. I have generally found that to be excellent advice in all kinds of ways. You can think of it for relationships, for all kinds of things. And I'm sort of having that feeling now with AT&T. This has been such a difficult process in so many ways. I probably won't switch, to be honest. It'll probably settle in and be fine. Excuse me. But that's just a sign of how much it cost them in goodwill with me as a new customer. Their onboarding process should make me feel like I'm making the best decision of my life, right? Not the opposite, where I'm honestly expecting it to feel like a mistake. It's just not good for them. Anyway, that was my biggest down for the week. Again, first world problem. But it was a bummer. It's still a bummer. Our son's phone is still not working. I still have to go through some kind of process I don't understand to get it going. I don't trust that the ultimate bill will actually be what they promised. I'm very on guard with them, and the whole thing just ended up feeling like a mistake. That's fun. That's great branding and customer service. Okay. Anyway, that's my ups and downs this week. Next up, top stories. All right, top stories. So this week, I want to start with one I actually think of as good news, though maybe not something everyone's interested in, like, for example, if you don't have an iPhone. Sorry if that's you. So I won't spend too much time on it, but I was just surprisingly excited about this, and it's another Apple story. So Apple finally announced this week what they're doing with AI. First, they don't call it AI, they call it Apple Intelligence. And a lot of commentators have been snarky about that it's just a typical attempt to brand it their own way and be clever. I really don't see it that way. And by the way, on a separate note, I'm noticing that maybe most tech commentators are just snarky at baseline. And I really don't understand that. What's the value in being cynical and negative and judgmental all the time? It just makes you seem small and immature to me. But anyway, not the main point. So when you dig in to what Apple is doing with this, it actually makes a lot of sense to me that they would distinguish what they're doing with their own brand. The AI features coming in Apple products are really contained within the devices themselves and the Apple universe. They're designed to bring the functions of your phone and iPad and laptop together in a way that makes everything easier to use. For example, you're looking at your phone. Someone sends you a picture. You can just say to your phone, add this to my note about next week's meeting with the team. And it knows what you're talking about. It can tell what's on your screen at the time. It can figure out what meeting you're talking about. So again, it has access. Sorry, it's confusing. A little mush mouth. It has access to everything you're doing on your devices and across all your devices. It can help you engage with them and use them in a more effective way. It can help you improve and edit your writing, come up with original images for slideshows, just a ton of interesting ways to make what you do easier, but all inside of your Apple world. And they're super clear that from a security perspective, and this is really important, it mostly all happens on your devices, and your information is not being shared anywhere, which is not the case with the other AI services. So again, it just makes good sense to me that this is called Apple Intelligence. It's AI applied to your Apple universe. Now, if you want to do something that has to do with something beyond that, it'll ask you, it'll say, hey, this sounds like something that ChatGPT might be helpful for. Do you want to open that and check there? Again, it's making a distinction. Apple Intelligence is limited to certain things within the Apple world. AI, ChatGPT is general intelligence in a different realm. So anyway, the features, some of them are just super cool. One of my favorites, though I'm not sure I'll personally ever use it, is that in the new iPad calculator app, you can take the Apple Pencil, write out formulas by hand with variables and everything you might need in, sort of advanced math, and it will solve them for you and show you the answer in handwriting right there on the screen. That one's really like magic to see. It's worth trying to find a clip of that online. You can't believe that when you see it. And by the way, if you own Apple stock, the exciting part there is that all these new features that are really very new and exciting and attractive in a way that I don't think I've seen anything for a very long time. They only work on the latest phones with the newest Apple chips. So that's going to drive a big boost of new phone sales. I think it'll accelerate a lot of people upgrading. Anyway, enough about that. But I'm excited about it. I can't wait. Looks like I might need a new phone this fall. Next up, the ruling from the Supreme Court this week on the abortion drug mifepristone. The headline is they allowed it to continue being available. They rejected the lawsuit against it. So that sounds like good news, right? Like maybe they're not totally crazy, trying to limit abortion access nationwide. And of course, near term, that is true. It is definitely good news that it's still available, but it's not actually as good as it sounds. They didn't actually rule that it's okay. They didn't rule on the merits of the case. All they said was that this group that brought the suit didn't have the right to do that. They didn't have standing. Standing, if you don't know, in the legal context means that in order to bring a case against a policy or a company or whatever, you actually have to have been harmed by it, right? There has to have been some violation of your rights in some form. And that was just not the case with this group. This was a made-up group specifically intended just to challenge this law. So the bottom line is it was a technical ruling, nothing to do with the underlying question, no reason to think they won't knock it down when the right kind of case comes before them. Next item, actually bad news and related news. It turns out the religious right is actually coming for IVF, in vitro fertilization. The only way many families are able to have children, they're coming after it. It's not paranoia, it's their stated position. So the real issue is fetal personhood. That's the next target of the anti-abortion movement. They want to declare that a fetus is a legal entity. And if that happens, all kinds of crazy policies grow from that. The first, most present one being no more IVF, because if every embryo, which to be clear is literally a handful of cells in a lab, if every one of those is a full legal person, then disposing of them, the ones that aren't used, is murder. You probably know, but in IVF they fertilize, many eggs because you can't count on any single one working out. So they fertilize a bunch of them, and when one is successful, they dispose of the rest. But that won't be legal anymore in a fetal personhood world. So let me just state the obvious here, or at least one of the obvious things. This is an exclusively religious perspective. It's not science, it's not health, it's not family planning, it's pure religion. It just is. And basically, it's pure Christian religion. Jews don't believe that. They believe that the fetus is not a person until it's born. So this is one more example of what I think of as the Christian Taliban, really, trying to force its extreme religious views on the rest of us and make us all live under their beliefs. And of course, there have always been people who want to do that. The crazy thing is how open and forward it is now and how close they are to being able to do it. The Supreme Court seems right there, ready to make it happen. And another obvious thing to be said is this is just not the way it's supposed to work in America. We have separation of church and state. We're supposed to have all religions be respected, none established, none preferred over the other. For the government to take on a position, a legal position, that this religious perspective is the law, it's just wrong. It is just not how we do it here. So this brings us to our election watch segment. We can't let it happen. We have to stop it. We have to elect Joe Biden. We have to keep the Senate. If we can do that, we can get rid of the filibuster and we can actually fix these things permanently, at least semi-permanently. We can fix the Supreme Court. We can make abortion legal nationwide. We can protect ourselves from this crazy push from the religious right. And of course, the opposite is also true. If Biden loses, all of this comes to pass. If you've heard about Project 2025, I don't know if you would have heard about that. I'm hearing more and more about them. This is a group that's planning ahead, literally making step-by-step specific plans for what they'll do if Trump is elected. And if you listen to what they're saying, you know this isn't any kind of exaggeration. They are promising to strip away the independent judiciary so they can go after their enemies. That alone completely brings down our system of democracy. Trump will pardon the January 6 rioters. He's calling them heroes now, political prisoners. They will use the military to go into neighborhoods all across the country and round up and deport 11 million immigrants. That's what they want to do. They are planning to pass a nationwide abortion ban, even though they lie and say they're not. They're going to get rid of the Department of Education, get rid of the World Health Organization, give Ukraine to Russia. I mean, any of it by itself, let alone all of it, would be absolutely insane if it weren't true. But it is. So anyway, here's our weekly reminder. This is not a drill, folks. They are coming for everything we care about. We don't want to live in the world that comes if they win. And the only way to stop them is to win in November. Now, I know you know that. This is not news to you, most of it, I'm sure. It's incredibly stressful to think about, too. I don't love talking about it all the time. But I also want to look back and wonder if I could have done more to keep it from happening. So what can we do? I think personally, this just occurred to me yesterday. One thing is that a lot of us have young adult children. We do, for example, who are probably struggling right now. They're eligible to vote, maybe for the first time, but they're having a hard time, especially from the Gaza situation. They're having a hard time thinking about voting for Biden, to say the least. And first, it's just an impossible subject to talk about. It's just so painful and horrible. You can't really talk someone out of those kinds of feelings. At the same time, young people, of course, are normally a strong group of Democratic voters, which makes sense. Of course they are. Virtually every issue they care about is clearly better with Democrats in charge. Climate change, public policy, fair taxes on corporations, Gaza for that matter, for sure, gay and trans rights, just so much of it, very long list, is night and day better with Democrats in charge and a Democratic president, Joe Biden. So it seems to me the one thing we can do is keep talking to our kids to help them understand that they have to come out in November and vote for Joe Biden. To not do that, even for good reasons, is to actively undercut everything they care about. To that end, I'll wrap up this segment with a hilarious quote I was reminded of the other day from the author David Sedaris that speaks to this choice. Here's what he said. And warning, this is not safe for work or in the car with young kids, okay? So David Sedaris says, I think of being on an airplane. The flight attendant comes down the aisle with her food cart and eventually parks it beside my seat. Can I interest you in the chicken, she asks, or would you prefer the platter of shit with bits of broken glass in it? To be undecided in this election is to pause for a moment and then ask how the chicken is cooked. It's funny. It's painful, but it's funny. The choice is so obvious. Don't get distracted by how the chicken is cooked. One choice is food. The other is a platter of shit with bits of broken glass in it. All right, that's it for top stories and election watch. Sorry for it being so stressful, but I'm afraid it just is, right? There's just no way to avoid it. We need to lean into that, at least for a while now, the next few months, use our inner skills to stay sane in the process and do the work that needs to be done. All right, next up, inner game gold. All right, inner game gold. These are the ideas I return to over and over to help me stay on track. Last week we talked about the Zen classic, be master of mind rather than mastered by mind. So great and helpful. This week it's the quote from Leo Tolstoy that I have in the Raise Your Inner Game book. The ultimate purpose in life is to serve humanity. This is helpful to me because it's a great reminder of what's really important, personally, collectively, and it's a good tie-in to what we just talked about with the election. Our purpose is not to be well-known or super rich or to create the kind of superficial appearance of success you see in so much of the Instagram sort of world. That stuff gives me the creeps, honestly. None of that matters in the long term. None of that will make us truly proud of ourselves over time. We might be attracted to it, we might think it's what we want, but story after story after story, people will tell you they get it, and they're like, no, that's not it. The only thing that does that for us is to know we've been of real value to the people in our lives. Everything else is empty when you get right down to that. So anyway, spend some time thinking about this. The ultimate purpose is just that, to serve the people in our lives first and humanity in general beyond that. How does that idea sit with what you're focused on right now? Now, to be clear, that doesn't mean you shouldn't focus on yourself, on what helps you feel strong and open and confident and capable. You absolutely need to do all of that in order to be of real value to others. Just make sure that the things you think will do that for you are also in line with serving others. If they're only about you and the appearance of success, they're probably not going to get you there. We need to develop the inner skills to be our best selves as much as possible. That's how we serve others. If you haven't read the Raise Your Inner Game book, it's a great place to start doing this kind of inner work. There's a link here in the notes. If you play sports, you might prefer to learn the skills in that context. There's the Raise Your Inner Game Sports Academy training. There's a link here. Check that out too. Either way, this is a great exercise for this week. Just think about this idea. The ultimate purpose in life is to serve humanity was the original. I think of it as to serve the people in your life. And just see if that helps you feel more clear and positive and focused about what you're doing in your life right now. It definitely does that for me. Hopefully it will for you too. All right, next up, raise your outer game. Okay, raise your outer game, where we talk about the things we care about in our outer life, our health, our relationships, our finances. This week, I want to talk about pickleball. I mentioned last week I've started playing pickleball like seemingly everybody else, but it is super fun. You can see why there's so many people doing it, why it's such popular and growing so fast. And it's just helpful in so many ways. Of course, the general idea is it's not just pickleball, right? It's being active in general, especially as we get older. I've done several things in the past couple of years since my heart procedure. I had a stent put in a couple of years ago, if you don't know, that have really made a substantial improvement in my quality of life. I've been going to the gym a couple times a week, just a half hour each time, but I'm so much stronger now in really basic everyday things. All kinds of things I do around the house are just easier now. I can do them better. I get less fatigued when I do them. And in some cases, there were some things, I was even getting to the point where I couldn't do them at all anymore, like rotating the tires on our car. That had gotten to the point where I was having to say, I need help for that. Now, it's no big thing. That feels great. So that's one thing. I, of course, lost some weight, good amount of weight, enough that it feels different. Looks like I'm finally able to keep it off, which feels great. Knock on wood. That also helps make everything easier on top of making me feel better about myself. That's another really great thing to do. None of these are new to us, of course. I've been trying to keep running, get the cardio exercise. That's getting harder, but it's still good enough. Makes me happy whenever I do it. But pickleball is a whole nother thing. There are two main things that make it great. One is that it's just fun. I mean, really fun in a physical way, in a way that sports and play does for you. But that there are very few ways to do that as you get older. To play a game, a fast-paced game, gets your blood going, makes you sweat. It's just super fun. It's the fast pace, the competitive aspect of it. It's great. And you forget what that's like, right? Again, we've just run out of options for that as we get older. The other piece, and this ties right into the fun, is that you can be good at it as you start very quickly, and again, as you get older. I played the past 2 weeks in a group, in this league I'm in, with a woman who's 88 years old. No joke, 88. She can't move very well. She's pretty slow. It's easy to have her not get to the ball, but if she does get it, if it gets near her, she's got it. She's a great shot. She can totally keep up and even win at 88 years old. What else is there where that's possible, right? It's really something. So I'm having a ton of fun right now, but I can realistically imagine being able to keep doing this for another 20 years. And that is the opposite of everything else I do in this kind of physical health realm. Am I going to be running for 20 more years? Almost certainly not. Going to the gym? I can probably do that. I'll probably scale back a bit, but I can keep going. But you get no cardio for that. You get none of that active fun. There's just nothing else like it. And by the way, it is an amazing workout. I track my calorie burn on my watch. A night of league play, which can be 2.5 hours, which, to be honest, can get to the edge of being too much sometimes, kick my butt pretty good. But on a night like that, I will burn between 1,000 and 1,500 calories in one night. That is insane. And I'm having fun the whole time. Way more fun than the 2 hours of running it would take, as if I could even do that, right? I definitely could not do that. So anyway, one more benefit of pickleball from my perspective. If you're not playing yet, I suggest you give it a try. I'm sure there are options around you for beginners. It's a very easy game to get started with. I think you'll really like it. All right, next up, our charging station challenge. All right, charging station challenge, our challenge for the week. This week, I want to suggest you keep an inner game journal, just some sort of running commentary on how you're doing internally. Doesn't have to be a big thing, not a long Dear Diary sort of project. I just do this once a week. I have a reminder on my calendar because it's super easy to forget if I don't. I have a Pages doc on my Mac once a week, typically Friday morning, doesn't matter when. I open it up and write a paragraph or two on what's going on. Here's what I'm working on. Here's what happened last week. Here's how I'm feeling, my concerns, things that felt great, what I'm looking to for the coming week. Not a big deal, but it's actually very helpful to keep that perspective going, for one, but mostly just to check in with myself. It's so easy to only focus on the tasks on our list, but how we're feeling is, of course, more important to our overall mental health and happiness, but also has a lot to do with how well we'll do the tasks on our list. So I just find it really helpful. If you're not doing this already, you may be, but if you're not, give it a try this week. At least once. Sit down. Maybe it's more than a 1 week exercise. But anyway, sit down and just a real short summary. Here's what's going on. Here's how I'm feeling. Here's what's coming up. All right? Okay, next up, highly recommended. All right, so these are things I'm crazy about right now, books, shows, gadgets, or just things I'm reviewing. So this week, honestly, not a lot to talk about. Couple more shows. Again, both on Apple TV+. That's kind of a pattern for me and us. Sorry if you don't have that. Maybe not helpful in that case. But anyway, the first is called Manhunt. It's the story of the search for John Wilkes Booth after he assassinated President Lincoln. Certainly some dark elements to it, right? It's not a comedy, for sure. It was very well done. Super interesting to get a feel for life during that time. Helpful to be reminded of the horror of it all, slavery, the war, assassination. It's not a happy show, but it's very good. Recommended. On the lighter side, another show, this one's called Loot. Maya Rudolph plays a woman who divorces her tech founder husband and ends up with something like $87 billion, this ridiculous amount of money. It's just funny. It's very, very light, even to the point of thin. There's some good stuff in there, though. It makes really great use of skewering that kind of wealth and people being just so detached from reality in that wealth bubble. She is super funny. Honestly, maybe the funniest person out there right now. It just kills. There are a few scenes in there that I'm just laughing out loud. And it's just all about her and her comedic chops. It's very funny. Now, to be fair, it's a little inconsistent. The rest of the cast, not all great, not all the writing maybe as good. Margaret, my wife, couldn't stay with it because of that. But for me, it does what I just sometimes need a show to do, which is to lighten things up for a few minutes. The episodes are short, typically, 25 minutes or whatever. Works for me. All right, so those are my recommendations for the week. Manhunt, the John Wilkes Booth hunt, search, and Loot with Maya Rudolph. Not a ton, but good stuff. Reminder again to check out the Raise Your Inner Game book if you could use some help with your mental game in these stressful times, or the Sports Academy training if you play sports. Otherwise, that's it for this week. I hope you have a great week ahead. Keep up the good work. I will talk to you next time.